kind of go through the first slides and if there's anything we want to add.
Great.
Can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right, can you see this? So will my video, can they see my face or no?
You'll have the option to turn that on if you'd like to. Yep,
Okay.
I can see you now.
Are you guys going to be showing your face? Because if you're not, I don't have to.
I'm trying to right now, and it says the host won't allow me to.
Let's see. I'll give you I'll give you all co-host permissions, and then you should be able to.
Can everybody share their faces if they want to be seen, please?
Let's see.
Well, yeah, like especially the host, maybe.
All of you will, as I'm granting you access. I've granted you all co-host access. Attendees, let me see. Would you like for attendees to be seen as well?
Yes, please. Give them the option.
Okay, let's see.
So I can't see anybody's face. Does anybody? The only thing I see is the first slide.
I can see you and Rianka right now, and then XYPN webinars. So at the beginning, Rianka, if you can click for Brian on those parts. And then, Brian, did you see anything that you wanted to have changed on those first slides or that last slide?
No, that looks good.
I saw you clicking around.
Yeah, no, it looked good.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, we're going to give this a couple more minutes for people to keep logging on. Good to see so many people so far.
You not only get DEI conversation, you have a pre of my stand-up comment that I have that night here.
Insight to Rianka's life.
Right. Oh gosh, I'm in tears. That is hilarious.
It's a good way to start the day.
Oh yeah. Oh goodness.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. People coming on. Adam, John, Jordan. Good to see you all. Well, welcome, John. We're looking forward to it too. Ryan, Regina. Good to see everybody. Give this a couple more minutes. We'll start right at the top of 1:30. Thanks again, Rianka, for coming on.
Thank you, Brian, for having me. This is going to be great.
I'm excited. Love it, love it, love it.
Radiant.
All right, shall we get started? It's officially, well, almost 1:30. Let's get started. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our first diversity conversation of 2019. I'm Brian Thompson. I'm XYPN's president, the diversity committee's president, and I appreciate you taking this time to join us today. As a committee, our mission is to lead the industry by empowering financial planners to successfully serve diverse populations of clients through community, collaboration, and education. One way that we do that is through our quarterly diversity conversations. We want to bring people like you together so we can find ways to improve XYPN and in turn make a positive impact on the industry as a whole. On our agenda today, we'll have a presentation from Rianka Dorsainvil, CFP, about what she's learned about diversity, equity, and inclusion from her popular podcast, 2050 Trailblazers. Then we'll have a Q&A with Rianka, which you can participate through in the chat box, the Q&A chat box. And then at the end, I'll highlight some upcoming events and ways you can get involved with the committee. Having trouble speaking today. Before we hop into things, I want to give some background on Rianka. As a successful millennial certified financial planner, Rianka offers a unique perspective not only on the current state of financial services industry, but on how to stay relevant in an ever-changing world. Rianka's presentations are thought-provoking, and her radiant energy and positivity add a special flair, making them engaging and memorable. Rianka connects with their audience with audiences of all demographics through her passion in financial planning and her genuine desire to help other people. In addition to being the president of Your Greatest Contribution and host of the 2050 TrailBlazers podcast, Rianka serves as a member of CNBC's Digital Financial Advisory Council and CFP Board's Diversity Advisory Group. She's also been recognized for her accomplishments and leadership within the industry by leading publications and organizations such as Investment News, where she got the 2017 Women to Watch Rising Star Award, and Wealth Management's 10 to Watch of 2018. She's been published in Forbes, USA Today, Black Enterprise, CNBC, Women's Health, and more. I've admired her work for a long time, and her influence has been great on me. And I'm so glad that she's here to share some of her wisdom today. And with that, I'll pass it to Rianka.
Wow. Thank you so much for that warm introduction, Brian. Not much more to say about myself after that introduction. So, wow, thank you all so much for having me. And I'm so excited today to talk about what 2050 Trailblazers has taught me about DEI in the financial planning profession. And so before we get started today, let's not keep it a secret what we're learning here. Let's share it. You know, if you have some aha moments, if you have some thought-provoking questions that you want to put out there, share it. You know, let's be social. Here are a couple of hashtags that we can use. I've also included my Twitter handles that you can personally tweet me or the 2050 Trailblazers, so we can keep the conversation going. We can keep the discussions going. So Brian did a phenomenal job for the introduction. So I'm the founder and president of Your Greatest Contribution. It is a 100% virtual, fee-only, comprehensive financial planning firm. And the reason why we're here today, I am also the creator and host of 2050 Trailblazers. It is a podcast and platform focused on sparking conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion, the DEI, within the financial planning profession. Now, there is so much to discuss today. But for our time together, we will discuss the why behind 2050 Trailblazers, what I've learned over the past year, and what you can do to get involved in diversity, equity, and inclusion in our profession. So to make sure we're on the same playing field, just want to I wanted to test your knowledge on a few things. So as of December 31st last year, there are 83,106 CFP professionals in the United States. 1 in 4 financial advisors in the United States hold the CFP designation. And this is according to the research-based firm Dorsainvil. So my question to you is, in 2014, the CFP board released a white paper, Making More Room for Women in the Financial Planning Profession. What percentage of women did they share are CFP holders? Give you a couple of seconds here. So do I end the poll?
Rianka, you can end it when you're ready,
Okay.
or I can do that on my end.
Okay.
Yep. Everyone see the poll, okay? Let me know
All
if
right.
you can't in the chat.
Awesome. Well, we have, okay. Well, 57% of you all are correct. That is right. Sorry, there we go. 23%. If you answered 23%, you are correct. So at this time in 2014, the percentage of women holding the CFP designation was 23%. And even today, the number is still 23%. But since then, you know, the CFP board has launched several initiatives. One is called the WIN initiative. Others have been providing a platform for women to give back by being a mentor, both men and women, by being a mentor, and also mentoring the next generation of women. So this is phenomenal. My next question I have for you, again, want to make sure we're on the same playing field. We all have the stats in front of us. In 2018, the CFP board released research called Removing Barriers to Racial and Ethnic Diversity in the Financial Planning Profession. What percentage of Black and Latinx that they share are CFP holders? I'll give you a couple of seconds here too. And I think we just have a well-informed group here. I'm seeing the poll numbers come in. It's been, you know, all over Twitter and, you know, in the financial community. So yeah, majority of you are correct. So the number is 3.5. And so if you answered 3.5%, you are correct. That's right, less than 4% of CFP holders are Black and Latinx. That's combined, less than 4%. And the CFP board is taking an active approach in exposing the profession to diverse students and professionals through various campaign ads. You know, I've seen a lot of TV ads and radio ads, and a campaign that they launched a couple of years ago now called I'm a CFP Pro, again, exposing the profession to students and career changers. Also providing diversity scholarships. So where in some communities, financial resources may be a barrier to entry. So there's some scholarships out there for the education, also to be able to take the CFP exam. And I believe this is great. This is awesome. The awareness is growing. We're going to bring in more women. I'm very optimistic. We're going to bring in more women. We're going to bring in more Black and brown professionals. But my question is, and what my question continued to be is, how do we retain these diverse professionals? We have them. Now what? So over the past couple of years, I started seeing conversations pop up that addresses, you know, racial and gender diversity in the profession, in Facebook groups, in chats on LinkedIn, Twitter. Twitter can be a battle zone sometimes. And while some of the conversations were constructive, most of what I saw was not. You know, when it comes to conferences, sure, we've had these conversations at conferences. They typically happen late at night. They typically only happen one time. Most of the attendees look like me. They're not very well attended. And it only happens one time a year. But you know, in what other places are we having these conversations outside of conferences that are in a constructive manner, where people are being heard, bringing valuable insight, bringing valuable conversation, and providing tangible solutions? I didn't see it. So I thought, where can we provide on-demand listening? So it doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter what time it is. We can provide on-demand listening that has a reach to everyone who is typically in the room, but especially to those who are typically not in the room. And so thus, I created 2050 Trailblazers. And so there's a lot in a name. And so with everything that I do, there's always a purpose behind it. Even your greatest contribution has a purpose behind the name. So I get a lot of questions about what is 2050 Trailblazers? Like, where did the 2050 come from? Well, according to the US Census Bureau, in the year 2050, the minority population will become the majority population. And it's my belief that if the financial planning community will continue to grow and thrive into this awesome community I know we can grow into, we have to start looking like the American mosaic that America is growing to. And as you know, right now, we do not. Now, there has been some updated research, and the year is actually now 2042. So by the year, I believe 2042, the minority population will be the majority population. However, 2042 Trailblazers doesn't have a good ring to it. So I kept 2050. So just to let you know, I know the year is much sooner. 2050 just had a better ring to it, better sound. And so Trailblazers, let's talk about what it means to be a Trailblazer. If you are a young professional, if you are a woman, if you are a person of color in this profession, you are blazing a trail. If you are a young professional, you may be the first paraplanner, the first millennial, the first Gen Y in the firm, and you are blazing a trail for the next generation. If you are a woman, you may be the first woman to be a partner at the firm. You are blazing a trail. And if you are a Black or brown professional, you may be the first in their firm. And you, in fact, are blazing a trail for the next generation. So 2050 Trailblazers has a very powerful meaning to it. And I wanted to create a name that is inherently inclusive. And so thus far, we've had a couple of seasons. The first season was set in the foundation, and the second season was called Practicing Dynamic Allyship. And let me tell you, there were so many takeaways from season one. Season one laid the foundation for so many impactful conversations, and we covered a lot of ground. From episode one with Cy Richardson, who is the vice president of the National Urban League, where we discuss how to bring down the barriers of entry for both people of color and other minority groups entering into the profession. And also how to bring down the barriers from families from achieving financial success. If you are new to the 2050 Trailblazers family, I encourage you to definitely take a listen to that, because we break down more stats and we give more information behind the why. Why is diversity, equity, and inclusion important for the financial planning profession? We also talked about, so from episode one all the way to episode 9 with Katie Osberger, she was phenomenal. The conversation was so good that we had to break it down to two episodes. So episode 8 and 9 is with Katie, and we covered important strategies to how to not only attract, but also retain diverse talent. And we learned to stop using code words. And Fong Long helped me understand what it means to use code words. And a code word that we typically use is diversity. And diversity has so many facets, so many layers to it. And so if we're going to actually move the needle to diversity, we can't keep using it as a catch-all word. So typically in my years, and I've only been in the profession for 10 years now, when we talked about diversity, or when I saw diversity being talked about on a panel, it stopped at gender. We only talked about women diversity. We never touched on racial until last year. And so if we're going to start, again, moving the needle, let's call it out by name. Let's say gender diversity. Let's say racial diversity. Let's say sexual orientation diversity. Social economic diversity. As you can see, there's so many conversations that need to be had that falls under the word diversity. And so there were so many other takeaways. So with one very simple one of how to build an inclusive organization. And sometimes it just starts with us. It starts at looking at the job description languages. Now, when you take a look at your job description, especially for those who are on the call, on the webinar, who is looking to bring in some more women, some more diverse talent into your practice, as you review it, does it scream masculine, attractive words where women would automatically exclude themselves from even applying? Are there excessive use of superlatives such as expert, superior, world-class? Those type of words can be a turnoff for women candidates who are usually more collaborative than competitive in nature. Also, I've looked at some job descriptions here recently, and it's a laundry list. And one of the recommendations I have, and some of the takeaways we got from season 1, was identify which requirements are nice to haves versus must haves. So let's eliminate the nice to haves, because as we know, research shows that women are unlikely to apply for a position unless they meet 100% of the requirements. So if you have a whole slew of nice haves instead of must haves, this is maybe why you're not getting a lot of women applying. While men, on the other hand, they will apply if they only meet 60% of the requirements. Also, I want us as a community to start being careful with using the word culture fit. Culture fit. And I say this because if I was reading that, I don't know if I would be a culture fit. But what I can be is a culture add. When you say culture fit, asking someone to assimilate, to blend in to your organization instead of standing out. And as a Black woman, I already stand out. So you're asking me to assimilate. I know I can be a culture add, but when you say culture fit, those are some of the things that come to mind to a person of color. It's like, do I even fit in? But if you're looking for a culture add, I know I can be a valuable asset. So if you are having trouble finding women, if you are having trouble bringing in people of color, I want you to really consider and look at the job description, because that's where it starts. Also, flexible work schedules. So according to the Family Caregiver Alliance, the percentage of family or informal caregivers who are women is 68%. So it is safe to say that women, more than half the time, are the caregivers for aging parents, for sick relatives, and for children. And so we want to provide an environment, a culture for them to know that they have the space and freedom, that they won't lose their job if they do take care of children or sick family members. We live in a very cloud-friendly world, okay? My firm is 100% virtual. And there's a lot of things you can do from home that you don't necessarily have to do in the office. And so let's start thinking about offering flexible work schedules. And also, I want to talk about insurance policies and having them be a little bit more inclusive. This may come as a surprise to some of us, but if you don't have a maternity leave policy, you really can't expect women to stay, or you can't expect to retain them if there's no incentive for them to stay. And I'm going to go off on a limb here, and I'm going to say, also offer paternity leave. I know. I'm pushing the limits here, but let's offer maternity and paternity leave. If women, as we can see, are more than half the time the caregivers, let's offer some space for men to take up the workload as well, especially when it comes to caring for small children. Also, let's talk about the health insurance policies and, being allies with our LGBTQ community. And let's check some of the language. Does the language in the health insurance policy share only spouses are covered? Or can we start looking for health insurance policies for our company and organizations that say it's partners are covered, for those who are in long-term committed same-sex relationships? The list really goes on, but some of my top takeaways on how to build an inclusive organization, those are just some. And then also, number two, as we know, our profession needs to evolve. And what I mean here by building an inclusive profession to serve our clients is that we all just need to become better and aware of the various and the multifacets of cultures that are here in America. And having colleagues who come from different backgrounds can help in these conversations to not only bring in clients, but also retain them. I've learned so many different things from my clients, but one came from an Uber driver. He is African. I took a Uber, I think it was like 3 weeks ago, took a Uber. And we were in DC traffic, so we had a lot of time to talk. And he was sharing how he immigrated to the United States about 18 months ago, and how he is a chemical engineer. My first thought was, whoa, you're a chemical engineer and you're driving Uber. My first question was why, but it wasn't until we actually had the conversation about finances and their financial system that it all made sense to me. Well, he immigrated from Nigeria, and in their culture, their financial system and how they see money is totally different. They do not believe in debt. So over there, when it's time to build a home, you don't finance it. You buy your home in parts. First, you buy the land, and then you buy the materials to build the house, and then you build it. Whoa, right? And so then he goes on and shares about when he came here, just the banking system is totally different. And he moved over a lot of cash. And because of his job, it's a really good job. He works at a very large firm. making really good money, and he's an Uber driver. So he's bringing in some extra income. But he brought over a lot of cash. The banker saw how much he was earning. The banker saw the cash that he had on hand. He gave him 2 cards. He didn't think anything of it. He went home. He started looking at the documents. He was like, okay, I know what this one is for. Like, what is this? It's credit card. So he calls the banker. He's like, hey, yeah, you gave me 2 cards. I think there's a mistake. And the banker's like, oh, no, there's a mistake. The first one is for a debit card, is your debit card. This is how you take out money from the bank or swipe it, and it takes cash immediately out. And then the credit card, because of your income and because of the money that you have in the bank, we gave you a $50,000 credit limit. He was like, excuse me, I think you made a mistake, $50,000. He was like, yeah, we're allowing you to have $50,000. And he told me he immediately cut up the card, because they don't believe in debt. And, as he is doing research himself around, Americans and how they spend money. And he had that epiphany of, this is why so many Americans have credit card debt or are living with so much debt, is because of easy access to credit like this. And they don't have that there. So that was an aha moment for me. And then even life insurance, they don't have life insurance there. You just bury your family. It was so many aha moments for me, even down to education. And so when working with a client who come from this culture from an African descent, you have to understand that education is really important to them, and that paying for it is really important, and not paying for it with debt. So now if you have some African clients, you could probably see why they are so opposed to taking out student loans or having their children take out student loans, because in their culture, debt is not something that they take lightly. And so that's interesting to know. Also, just through some of my work with my clients, I learned that the eldest son, so if you have a client who is a descent from Africa and they're here, they have immigrated here, the eldest son is financially responsible for the parents. So as you're working with these clients and you see a line item in their budget that probably says parents, this is why. In their culture, it is the responsibility of the eldest son to be financially responsible for their parent. And so understanding how to have that conversation with them of helping them be financially secure for their self, but also trying to figure out, all right, how do we navigate this conversation of if their parents need a place to stay, they're staying with the eldest son, or if they need money, how can we make sure that we as advisors are asking good questions and also providing them with really great solutions? So cognitive diversity, understanding the different cultures, is so important so that we can better serve our clients. I've had so many fascinating conversations, not only with African clients, with Hispanic immigrants as well, that season 3, that's what our conversation is going to be about, money and culture, because I think these type of conversations will be important for advisors to hear, so that you can go out and seek to diversify your client base. Or if you do have diverse clients from a racial perspective or a cultural perspective starting to come to you, you can better serve them. And number 3, I found purpose with 2050 Trailblazers. It was much more successful than I could have ever imagined. Over the summer, to my pleasant surprise, I received a lot of emails. I received a lot of calls. And majority of the people who were reaching out were white. And I'm smiling because they were reaching out because they were asking, how can I help? They started saying things like, I want to help. I want to bring in more diverse talent. I want to hire diverse talent. I want to go out and help, diverse communities, but I just don't know how. And I don't want to say the wrong thing. And so this conversation and those conversations over the summer led me to have a conversation about what does it mean to practice dynamic allyship. And so in season 2, we brought forth the allies. So again, I'm all about making sure there's no assumptions. Let's define things, right? So we cannot advance the culture around gender and racial and sexual diversity by ourselves. We need allies. So a diversity and inclusion ally is someone who is willing to take action in support of another person in order to remove external barriers that impede that person from contributing their skills and talents in a workplace, in a community. So it's almost like expected for Black and brown people to talk about diversity and inclusion and also fight for it. But what is not expected and always comes at a pleasant surprise and very welcoming is when white men and white women speak up and talk about gender and racial diversity. And we were so fortunate to have some powerful allies this season, like Tom Nally, the president of TD Ameritrade, Suzanne Syracuse, she's the publisher and CEO of Investment News, and Ed Jerkson, who's the past national president of the Financial Planning Association, or FPA. And Tom, during our conversation, he shared how they have diversity champions. Diversity and inclusion, that responsibility just doesn't live in HR, where typically that's where we see it. With TD Ameritrade, they shared that they have diversity champions at every level. So they have a culture of sharing how inclusion is a value that is through the company and is also everyone's responsibility. And that was important to share because a huge organization like TD Ameritrade can be a great example to other of their peers of showing this is how you do diversity and inclusion, right? Doesn't have to be perfect, but this is a good step. He also shared how, he want his, his team members to know that he supports them, and how he went out to a pride parade and to show support for his colleagues. And I thought that was phenomenal. And then Suzanne, media outlets, the financial outlets play a major part in advancing diversity and inclusion in our profession. And so Investment News have made it their business to bring forth diversity on a platform, starting with Investment News 40 Under 40 and uplifting the young professionals and giving them a platform and a voice. And then Women to Watch, raising women's voices up and then giving them a platform to talk. And then the celebration of Inclusion and Diversity Awards that they just started last year, celebrating organizations and companies and individuals who are making strides in this area. And then Ed Jerkson, he is one of the co-founders of the Diversity Committee for FPA. And all of these people are white. So this is just some of the examples of how to be an ally. So now what can you do? What can we do together? Looking at my time here, okay. As you can see, I'm a big person. I'm a big proponent on defining things. So let's define and let's understand what DEI means. We hear it, we use it interchangeably, and it sounds like it's the same thing, but each word has a different meaning. So let's break it down. Diversity is the presence of difference. The presence of difference. Equity is the approach that ensures everyone has the same opportunities. And inclusion, the difference and the different identities being valued, leveraged, and welcomed. There's a lot of talk about diversity. I want us to move to more conversations around inclusion. And then I want us to add the E, the equity. There's a lot of D&I, diversity and inclusion, but an important piece is the equity as well. So when you see DEI, this is what it means. So going forth on, what can we do? What can you do? We've heard it a lot. Spin your privilege. Well, what does that mean? What does that look like? To some extent, we all are privileged in one way or another. And when we choose to spend our privilege on empowering people from marginalized groups, we all win. Now, it's easy to say that, right? But what does that look like? I want to give you an example. Bill Winterberg, most of us may know him from FPPAD. He's a big technology person in the financial services world. And I think it was last summer when I first saw this. He has declined to speak on manuals. What are manuals? All male panels. That's right. He is spending his privilege because I'm sure he probably gets paid for this. So he's willing to give up income. He's willing to give up equity to say, from a gender perspective, if you have all males on this panel, you can count me out. He also went to another level of saying on his website, it has a list of other professionals that he has had exchanges with and recommends. So he shares on his website, if you are seeking a diverse group of panelists, I recommend these talented contributors with expertise in financial technology in our industry. That is just one way of what spending your privilege looks like. And also Sonia Dreisler, she was a guest on our podcast in season 2. It's a phenomenal episode with Arlene Moss. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it, please do so. I learned a lot. We all had a ton of aha moments. One of the things that she shared is that, and Sonia, for those who may not know her, she is a SRI, ESG, impact investing expert. So she helps large organizations from a consulting perspective include the SRI space in their firms. And she has said that she will not speak at conferences that do not have a representation of women or people of color as speakers. And she also will send a list of people of color who can speak on the same thing. So again, spending your privilege. So these are just a couple of just phenomenal examples of saying, I'm not speaking on manuals. I'll look at the speakers that you have in place. If they're all white, I'm not speaking. However, this is what Sonia shared with me. She was like, but if I can talk about diversity and racial diversity at your conference, I'll speak. And I thought that was very brave and courageous of her. So the next time you look at these conferences line up, what will you be looking for? Also, let's start to expand your network. Let's do it with being very intentional about being inclusive. Let's think about, how did you find your job? I found my job through a friend. That's how most of us find our jobs, right? Well, the first entry into an organization is who you know. And if you want to be a part of bringing more racially and culturally diverse talent into your firm or organization or into the profession, Let's be intentional about expanding your network. And also let's lift one another up. And what I mean by this is that we are living in a very, very interesting time in our world today. And over the summer, there was a lot of incidents happening here in the DC area where there were attacks on the Muslim community. And I know a few Muslim advisors. And my heart broke for them because I know what it feels like to be targeted. So I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. But I knew I couldn't not say anything. So what I did was I had several different text messages and then deleted it, then wrote some more, then deleted it. And then I just simply sent, listen, I don't know what to say, but I just want you to know that I'm here for you. And the advisors messaged me back and they were just like, you don't know how much this means to me. So while some of us wear what's happening in our household, we wear that to work and we still have to perform. There are some of us that are holding a lot more on our shoulders about what's going on in the world today. That is truly affecting us. And we still have to go into work. So it doesn't cost you anything to just send a text of just saying, hey, I'm thinking about you. That would mean so much. Which goes along with get comfortable with discomfort, you know? None of these conversations are easy, but we have to step outside of our comfort zone if we want to make some change and move the needle. And if you are an avid listener to 2050 Trailblazers, you can see that I was kind of growing in front of you all, even as the host, because I wasn't very comfortable with saying Black or Black and brown or white. Like, that's so uncomfortable for me to say. But I learned I can't use code words. Like, if we're going to talk about it, let's talk about it. And so I'm sure there's a ton of questions that you may have with some of your colleagues, maybe even some of your clients, or maybe even some of your friends, right? What I would suggest you do is, one, don't be afraid, but two, do your homework first. Like, Google is our friend. Like, let's do some research first and go to this person with a sense of just truly sharing. I'm really interested in learning more about your culture. I'm really interested in learning about your background. And here's some of the things I found. And I just want to learn more. There's a couple things that happened there. One, it shows that you cared enough to even do the research to then ask me questions. But two, it shows that you're being very intentional and like honest about it. And that will truly open up the doorways to really great conversations. So my question to you is, what are your next steps? What will you do this year to help the financial planning profession feel more inclusive and become more diverse? And feel free to open this up to the comments. We'll love to see it. If you want to share it on Twitter, go ahead. But we are definitely all in this together, and definitely feel free to use me and the platform of 2050 Trailblazers as a resource for you to continue to learn. That's all I have.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
So again, I appreciate you being on and really insightful information. I would love for people to just sort of respond right now if you had that last question, or what are you going to do next? I'd love to hear some answers in the chat box. And then we'll get to some questions for Rianka. There was a couple that came up already. And again, if you have questions that you are thinking of now, there's a Q&A box right in the middle of your screen that you'll be able to open and chime in. So anybody want to answer that question? What are you doing next? I loved these are really good takeaways as far as like 6 key points that you can just do. Spend your privilege, expand your network, lift up each other. I love that one, being able to lift each other up and make sure that people are being recognized for what they're doing, because some people are left out of that experience. Doing your homework, getting comfortable with discomfort. I have listened to 2050 Trailblazers as I've seen from season 1 how you've grown. So I love that you were open with that about being uncomfortable. Just asking the right questions.
Yes. I saw a question about like, how did I identify the allies for the interviews and pitch them to be on the podcast? Well, for me, I personally had relationships with all the people that I've had on the podcast. And I've seen their work. And so there are some people who do ask me to be on the podcast, but this is more so of like an invitation, because I want to see people who are not only talking the talk, but walking it as well. And so there are a lot of conversations that happen off air where I think like, oh, wow, this is really good. Let's talk about this on 2050. So Ed Jerkson, I'm a past president of Next Gen. And so I worked with him when I was in leadership. And Suzanne, just through my volunteer work and, being a 40 under 40 along with Brian, we know Suzanne. And so I have, relationships with all of the people that come on my podcast.
Cool. Robbie's saying he's going to make some changes to his websites. I think that's awesome.
Awesome.
University. I love it. Looks like Jennifer had a question. I'd love to hear more thoughts about how to improve the interview process to make sure that you're not accidentally excluding minorities or pushing minorities away. It's a great question.
That's a really great question. So in the interview process, and this is a really great question that we explored in detail in, I believe it was episode 9 of season 1 with Katie Alsberger, because she's an employee experience strategist. So I would definitely recommend to listen to that. But to make sure it's panels, like a panel interview instead of one person, because one person, we keep hearing this phrase, unconscious bias, but we all have it. It could be how the person dressed, or that person didn't answer that question right, and or they didn't seem professional. And so if you have a panel, and then if you have a discussion, you can kind of start calling people out on their unconscious bias and saying, oh yeah, this candidate came in, but they didn't seem professional. Well, and my hope is one of the other interviewers will say to their colleague, well, what do you mean by that? And let's kind of start chipping at what that actually means. And so in an interview, it is definitely recommended to do panel style, whether it's 2 or 3 people. I know it can feel intimidating to the person being interviewed, but it's actually in their favor, so that this unconscious bias that we have, it can kind of get called out.
In addition to having multiple people, I'm assuming you mean different people as well, like different types of people, not 3 white men or 3 white women or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for clarifying that, Brian. So yeah, I mean, if you are fortunate enough to have women at your firm or a person of color, definitely have them. It doesn't matter if they're not in leadership. They bring a very great, awesome, and different perspective.
Right. Really important. Sam asked, how do you think we can encourage young minorities to explore the financial planning profession? That's a great one.
Just from what, I mean, just even with me, I didn't even know the financial planning profession existed. I'm very fortunate that my school had a CFP board registered program. But even for those schools who do not, you know, going into schools and universities and just sharing with them that, hey, there is a career in financial planning. Going to HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, and sharing that this is a profession that wants more Black and brown people, that wants more women. And this is why I'm standing here today. And call it out to say, even as a white woman, even as a white man, like, I'm standing here because it's not enough Black and brown financial advisors to come to you. So we're helping them out. And we're just saying, hey, come on.
Being a true ally.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Sonia asked, shout out to Sonia, favorite resources beside your podcast for people to use?
Oh, this is a good one. You know, I'm going to thank you, Sonia, because I'm in the process of creating a resource, like a one-pager for just resources, whether it's books, whether it's past videos, TED Talks, because each guest who come on the podcast, we have show notes. And in the show notes, if you go to the actual website and don't just listen to it on the app, there are tons of links and articles. And so what I want to do is combine them and just create a one pager. Like, if you want to learn more about culture, here are some of the resources. If you want to learn more about racial diversity, here's some of the resources. And Sonia has a lot of resources. And so I will make sure to ask her for a few. But stay tuned, and I am more than happy to share it with you all to then share out to the community.
Angie offered a what she's doing. I speak to youth in schools and try to portray our fields as one that is flexible and open to diverse individuals, Hispanic, LGBTQ, female, and lower economic. I also try to be aware of the photos on my website. I think the photos on the website is a huge one too.
Huge. Yeah. You know, I think that came from Brian. You were a guest on the podcast, and phenomenal conversation. And I think that was one of the things that came out of your conversation as well, of showing the inclusiveness of, you know, the photos that you have on your website. And though you may not be a part of the LGBTQ community, you can be an ally, and you can share that you support clients who are in this community by putting up photos of same-sex relationships. It's as simple as that. And then it's easy to identify, like, oh, this advisor, they accept me, they welcome me.
Yeah, just that little nudge. I think that's great. Lisa asked, what about clients? Is also a really important one. How do we attract diverse clientele, show them that our aim is to be inclusive and an aware financial planner? I'm a white woman training to become a planner as a midlife career changer, focusing on women clients. But I'd see myself reflected back in all my clients. How do we do that?
Yeah, I think it starts, especially if you're a one-person firm, 1 or 2 person firm, it starts with your website. You know, the photos that you add, I mean, be very intentional about the language that you use, the words that you use, the pictures that you use, and show that it's a firm that welcomes various cultures and various backgrounds. That's one immediate way that costs nothing. If you have a website, just update some of the photos. And that can be a way to attract some diverse clients.
I also love Angie's response, sort of, if you have diverse clients, talk and teach them about the possibilities for their family, and then help spread the word. Spreading the word is one of my main catchphrases. Make sure to talk about what you're doing, what's going on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sylvia asked, how can you leverage the idea of diversity and equity and inclusion that is not political and does not belong to a certain political party?
Sorry, before we move forward, Kaya just brought up a really good point about let's not forget about pricing and minimum investments, which blocks out a lot of minority clients, even if they earn six figures. So be very intentional about how you set your pricing. And so I was very intentional with this of I don't have an asset minimum, especially if you're working with first generation wealth builders or first generation college graduates. And this hits both social economic background and racial background, right? From a diversity standpoint of if I'm a first generation college graduate, I am 9 times out of 10 earning the most in my family. And I have a higher possibility of earning six figures within the first 5 to 10 years of my career. And most of the clients that I work with do earn six figures or have a household of six figures. But from an asset standpoint, they don't have a lot. Well, that makes sense because they're still in the building stages. But they are very intentional with coming to me and saying, hey, I do not want to make the same mistakes my family made. So how can you help, right? And they've been turned away by firms who have $1 million of AUM minimum. Now, if you do work for a firm that have $1 million of minimum AUM, and you want to start working with first generation college graduates or younger clientele, my suggestion is to go to the firm owners and say, listen, I know we still need to help the millionaires, but can I just take on 5 non-traditional clients? And can we charge them a retainer? Because they are Henrys, the high earners, not rich yet. And they have a lot of disposable income and they need somewhere to invest. Can it be with us?
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. I know we're running up on time here, so I want to take one more question, and then we can take this to the forums or to Twitter or whatever, where we can continue the conversation as we like to do here. I'm trying to get to Sophie's question. How can you leverage the idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion? Assuming that this is not politically, like making sure that it's not going one way or the other as far as a political party, making it open for everybody.
So what's the question?
How do you sort of make sure that the engaging in diversity, equity, and inclusion is not a political stance, but more something that everybody needs to do, I think is the question. Exactly, so he says. All right, so making it non-political.
Nothing I said today was political.
Very good point.
So if political came up, I think that's where that unconsciousness comes in. Nothing that I shared was political today. It was just all around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, there are polarizing views on both sides when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I choose not to involve myself in those conversations. So I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah, but it's sort of like what you're saying, sort of focusing on the people and the results and how it's good for everybody, rather than just saying that it's only a minority, it's only the Black and brown people's job, it's only minority's job, those types of
right.
things. Everybody needs to participate. We can't do this by ourselves. All right, we got a minute left, so sorry for those questions that we didn't get to, but we're gonna wrap up here. We'd love to keep the conversation going, so make sure that you do contact us on Twitter or whatever way that you communicate. We are also in the forums and Mango apps if you're part of XYPN. We also have a diversity committee think tank that I would love for you to get involved with. There's the link here. We want to share ideas and get insights and questions about how we can move the needle together. As Rianka said, we all need to get involved. And if you really want to get involved, you can join a subcommittee on the diversity committee. We have 5, you can see right down there: mentorship, public outreach, our quarterly diversity conversations, scholarships, and affinity groups. We also have a free webinar series that has been going on since last November. And we have 2 more to go, working with first generation immigrant families on February 11th, and then working with couples from very different backgrounds on March 11th. Again, free webinars are just how to make you a better advisor and better clients, or serve your clients better. We also have open meetings for the diversity committee. Our next meeting is February 21st at 1 p.m. Mountain Time. Our next quarterly diversity conversation is April 25th. It's going to be a good one. We're still finalizing that, but if it is what I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be great. And if you are a part of XYPN, we have the Mango Diversity Committee Wiki and Mango Apps. All of our recordings, all of our webinars, everything that we have is there. So again, we appreciate you coming. We appreciate you having you. Thank you to Rianka for sharing your wisdom and your insights today. And hopefully we will see you next month or next quarter. Bye, everyone.